Hi, all you citizens of the world. I'm Michael James. I'm the host of the Live from the Heartland show. And one of the highlights from our show for the week of February 28th is the musician Don Paul. And he's someone we knew for a number of years through Athletes United for Peace, a longtime activist, musician, producer. We had a nice chat with him. We hope you enjoy Heartland Highlight with Don Paul for the week of February 28th.
Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit.
Okay, welcome back, all you citizens of the world. It's time for the first segment of Live from the Heartland show for the week of February 28th in the year 2025. And our next guest is the person you just heard playing a little bit of music. He's Don Paul with the band Rivers Answer Moons. And I first learned about Don Paul through my good friend Dave Megacy. Many of you have seen him on this show or know about him. He was a pro football player, president of Athletes United for Peace, worked with the union, still working away, trying to make the world a better place. And I heard about this guy, Don Paul, who I think was a hotshot, distance runner. I eventually met him at Basketball in the Barrio in El Paso, Texas. And I've learned a lot more about him. He not only was a hotshot runner, but he's been an activist, a producer of music, and a musician himself with a new album out. So with all that said, how you doing there, Don?
We're doing great. It's a sunny day in New Orleans, about 70 degrees here.
Yeah, well, we're in Chicago, and it's warmer than it's been, but it's gray and overcast. I have a soft spot in my heart for New Orleans. Been there a number of times, but most memorable was when Katie Hogan, my business partner in the Heartland Cafe and a producer of this show, we went down and we were in a southern oak tree in Audubon Park by the cat cage up in a pouring rain on Fat Tuesday, and we shook hands and agreed to start the Heartland Cafe.
Holy Tuesday. Yeah.
So we had, I love it, and I hope to come back, and I want to say hello to any of the people I know down there. Some of you know Ben Sandmel, Charles Cannon, Mark
the writer and drummer. Yeah.
And the late, great John Sinclair was there for a while. And I know your wife works at WOZ?
WWOZ, yeah.
WWOZ, I like that.
Director of Community Engagement, right. Maurice Philippe Desjans. Yeah.
Well, Don, tell us a little bit about your athletic history, and we'll use that for today's sports report.
Okay, I did an interview 2 days ago with a kind of colleague of yours, Trudy Leong, over at WLUW, and we talked about unions. She asked if I'd ever been in a union, and I said, yeah, the International Woodworkers of the World when I was logging in Southeast Alaska. And then we started union, Association of Road Racing Athletes in 1981, which was the spearhead for prize money in road running and in track and field. We got ourselves banned by convincing road races to award open prize money, and that led to lots of road races across the United States, such as the Chicago Marathon, having really significant prize money, and track and field in Europe, the Grand Prix Series, and so forth. So I'm very proud of that beginning, the Association of Road Racing Athletes, ARA. As an athlete, I qualified for the U.S. Olympic trial in the marathon in 1980 and 1988. I held the world road best for running 50 kilometers between 1982 and 1992. And I was very lucky in that I could continue as a master and a senior and compete at a more or less team level, but we won a couple of national championships and so forth. So I had a 26-year career, if you will, as a distance runner.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Well, besides being a distance runner, you also became an activist. And, when the world and the state it's in, and it's been in rough shape before and come through it, we hope that'll happen again. But we'd like to encourage younger people to learn a little bit from older activists. So, Don Paul, down in New Orleans, how about sharing a little bit of your activist history? Besides starting a union for distance road racers, what else you've been active in?
Yeah, a group of us started that union. About year 2000, as I turned 50, I really felt a calling to be more involved in the world. So I was in San Francisco then. We founded an entity called Housing is a Human Right for public housing residents. And that kind of landed me in Bayview Hunters Point and in the Black communities there for the next 5 years. Then the Katrina disaster, the federal flood, and the neglect afterward, I moved to New Orleans in 2006 and joined Common Ground. Common Ground was kind of an exemplar, I think, for what people on the ground can do. We had 10,000 volunteers that first year, gutted over 1,200 houses, and kind of stood in opposition to the bulldozing, the literal bulldozing of Black neighborhoods in the upper and lower Ninth Wards. So Common Ground, I think, stands as an example of what people can do as their own government. Yeah.
Give us a little bit of the situation today. I mean, post-Katrina, and most recently we had a number of people killed and injured in this terrorist attack when the guy drove down the street and hit a bunch of people. You know, all that's going on, and you're getting ready for big playoff championships in football, getting ready for Mardi Gras. How are people in New Orleans doing? How have they weathered those kind of attacks on their well-being?
Well, as the song goes, they roll with it, or we roll with it, you know. A lot has been visited upon people of color in particular in New Orleans. So they maintain their spirit. We maintain our spirit. The culture is strong. Every Sunday, there's a second line. The social aid and pleasure clubs are just as strong as ever. And there is, talking about young people, there's a huge influx of young people. I noticed at the Broad Theater last night when we saw a soundtrack for a coup d'etat again. You know, most of the audience was under 30, learning about what had happened in 1960. So what David Amram thinks, and what I think too, is that the knowledge that is now at hand for the younger generation, combined with the experience of those of us who are, you know, gray, can really accomplish a lot. Because I sense kind of like 1959, the younger generation is on the cusp of wanting to do something profound. And I think that combination of experience and expertise in what can happen in the digital world can be very transformational.
For the people who haven't been to New Orleans, give us a little bit about Mardi Gras and where it comes from and what goes on. I mean, I have really fond memories. I mentioned starting the Heartland, but down in New Orleans, I saw Irma Thomas, and I've seen the Meters, lots of music, lots of riding on that old streetcar, you know, and I remember some donut company came out and they had a place down there. So I had some really good times there. And during Mardi Gras, running through the streets with the marching bands in an altered state, you know, it's one of the highlights of my life. But tell people about what goes on.
Well, my favorite part of New Orleans during Mardi Gras are the Black masking Indians and their practices and their coming out on Mardi Gras morning, the fantastically beautiful costumes that are displayed then. We have a particular friend, Big Chief Shaka Zulu, who we always meet on Mardi Gras morning. So that about Mardi Gras. And then to refer back to my band, Roger Lewis and Kirk Joseph were also of the Dirty Dozen Brass Band. And, you know, the others, Don Bappy on banjo and guitar, and Herman LeBeau on drum set, and Alexi Marti on congas and cajon. All these musicians are daily involved or nightly involved in what's happening here. The music comes up to an even higher level than its ordinary level. The clubs are, you know, hopping every night, and there are a lot of people doing what you did when you visited, taking in that culture and getting happy and expanded.
You mentioned that movie, or you going to the movies, and it triggered my memory here. I met the guy Les Blank who did a movie called
Oh,
Always for Pleasure. Do you remember that movie? You seen it?
well, we're Les Blank hounds. We love Les Blank. We've actually bought the 5 DVD set, and we've given a couple of those sets out to friends. Yeah, we think he's marvelous. Yeah.
Yeah, I met him in Berkeley, I think, at a restaurant that's a friend of Megacy's owned.
Mm.
Well, one of the things that triggered me inviting you to come on live from the Heartland was you let us know, and I'm more than me, that you had a new album out, a new CD, a double CD called Louisiana Stories.
It's an album and a stage show. It was kind of
That's it.
inspired with the thought that the tracks would progress as if they were happening on a stage. So I'm very, very happy with how this album has turned out. I think it's a great band, Don Paul and Rivers Answer Moons. We also have Louis and Andre Michaud from the Lost Bayou Ramblers from Acadiana. And we have other guests, Herlin Riley, Lynn Drury, Erica Falls, Michael Torregano Jr., Mario Abney, who's now living in Chicago and leading a brass band there, among other bands. So I'm delighted with how it all turned out. We recorded part of the album over in Acadiana at Dockside Studios with a great engineer named Justin Tockett. It was #2 last week across North America among crossover jazz, and was #2 3 weeks ago, then #4. It seems to be really well accepted. Lots of people are downloading tracks via my Stanza Human Being site on the Substack platform. So I could not be happier with the actuality of Louisiana Stories.
We hear a good amount of Louisiana music when after this show goes up on WLUW. We're on a number of platforms these days. But one of the shows that follows us is the New Orleans Music Hour with a guy named Tom Jackson.
Tom Jackson. You helped me get to know him just 2 weeks ago. He's a great guy.
Oh, good. That was really where I was going. Did he ever get back? Did you get in touch with each other?
He sure did. He's a subscriber now to Stanza Human Being on Substack. Yeah. I need to send him like a New Orleans-oriented playlist. Yeah.
No, that'd be good. And I'll take any kind of playlist you got too, because I'm listening to music in between doing other things all the time.
Great.
Talk a little bit about you. You not only are making music, but on the broader sense of making music, you also have produced a number of albums and things going on. That I didn't know about.
Yeah, I was very, very lucky. When I first got into music through my brother Kenton in '88 in San Francisco, just after you and I met around the time of the AUP visit to Nicaragua. Yeah, that launched me into producing about 16 albums in the next 7 years there. I got heavily engaged with the creative music community and produced albums by Glenn Spearman, Lyle Ellis, India Cook, Paul Plymley, and had a band called The Suspect Many. But as I said to Trudy Lung, 2 days ago, it was like being reborn when I got into the recording studio. There was so many possibilities, and there a lot more possibilities now with the technology available.
You mentioned Trudy at the beginning, and she's actually at WZRD. Mm-hmm. I think her husband has got a show on WLUW. You just mentioned that Nicaragua and Athletes United for Peace. Were you on that trip? My mind fades a little bit, but I went to Nicaragua 3 times. And were you on one of those trips?
I went twice. Yeah, first was AUP. Rather, the second, I went first as a writer. I went to a conference of writers and performers in '87, independent of AUP, and then in '88, I led an AUP delegation that also ran the Managua to Messiah. El Replique.
That race. No, so that's a different trip than the one I was on.
Yeah, you were on with David and Guy and
Shinnick, and I went a number of times. How about let's do a little politics. What's going on in your state? I always go back to Huey Long, who's been billed as a kind of a fascist guy, but I always liked him saying, when fascism comes to America, it'll be wrapped in an American flag. And for a state that at one time was democratic and has produced a lot of interesting people, I think you're in a little bit rougher shape these days. And we did talk about young people and activism, but what's your take on our general situation in the country and how it manifests in Louisiana?
Well, I think it's definitely on us, we people, to become our own government. I don't think Democrat, Republican has any credibility at all anymore. The great thing about Louisiana, and it's part of what I try to evoke in the album and that the musicians, carry, is that this is a different state. As somebody, more than one person has said to me, you got to come to New Orleans. It's not like the United States.
That's true.
There's a whole lot of culture here across the state that kind of sustains itself. And I think, like, I was reading the American Prospect 2 days ago, and they're talking about all the districts where Republican congressmen who won big in November are visiting, and they're being completely rebuked and chastised for what's going on in terms of workers losing jobs, like being cut off. So I'm thinking that the extremities that are being waged against working people now are going to cause us to more unite and create a future apart from electoral politics.
Well, I agree with that. I do run with the Democrats a bit, and I get called out by some of my kids for that. But I also I'm big on activism in the streets and working it in a lot of ways. Our guest later in the show is from someone from Indivisible, who are out there doing a lot of stuff. What inspires you, both on the musical front and on your activism front?
It's always people. In Louisiana Stories, there are 2 tracks devoted to outstanding people whom I met in the late 70s into the 80s. Jack Groves from Acadiana, a driller in the oil field, and Marcia, real name Marie Cordier, who was my real introduction to New Orleans culture. Actually, you can see a glimpse of Marcia in Les Blank's movie, Always for Pleasure. Yeah. But it's always people, and the people here are so wonderful. I'm sure that's true there too. A section of my book, 9/11 Facing Our Fascist State, has to do with Rogers Park and a reading that you set up, bringing me to the Heartland Cafe and introducing me to that stupendous amount of culture, multicultural there, just on the murals of Rogers Park. Yeah.
Well, it is a wonderful place. We're, pretty blue over here, right by the blue water of the Great Lake, Michigan. We got a couple minutes left. So how about you got some plans for more music or things that you want to do, lurking in your brain and your heart that are on the horizon?
Right. I'm headed to California tomorrow morning to spend time with my daughter and her husband and 2 grandsons. And I'm performing on Friday night at an event organized by Matt Gonzalez, the former Green Party supervisor and later candidate for vice president, with Richard Howell, an old musical colleague. And I'll be going to Southern California, and I hope performing there at benefits. But the way I'm framing all the performances is for our neighbors, because so many are hard hit over the past year or so. Altadena, Pacific Palisades, Appalachia, La Haña, so forth. So the performances are under that theme of for our neighbors, and I'm very, very excited to be reuniting with old friends in the Bay Area and in Southern California. That really excites me. The next album from DPRAM, which I think we will call More Love Than Work, that really excites me. I urge everyone to check out those musicians, Don Vappy, Roger Lewis, Kirk Joseph, Alexi Marti, Herman Lebeau. Just put in their names and you'll go to a lot of places on the internet. And we have a lot of tracks up. They're being downloaded, All About Jazz, did The Dreamers and the Believers as its song of the day 2 weeks ago. So all of it's related to the band and possibilities for the public excite me.
Well, Don, we were talking about young people earlier, and I know that when my son Cadian put out his first albums with a band called Twin Peaks, they didn't do CDs; they just did records. And I'm wondering if you're old enough or young enough to still do records, or it's just CD.
I would love to put out LPs because I like the LP sound too, above anything else. We did CDs for a couple of reasons. 2 CDs, separate the instrumentals from the disc with vocals, and also to have the booklet. There's a 20-page booklet there, and it was more expensive to do vinyl.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, you're a wonderful guy, and I wish I still had some clubs. You know, I used to have music going in 3 places, and we'd have your band, but I'm sure that you got a lot of contacts up here, and when you're going to bring the band, I'm going to come, and I'll be in the front row.
Okay, great. Okay.
And I might come down and see you in New Orleans.
Do that. We've got a lot of good food, a lot of good everything here. So
you certainly do. Okay, everybody listening in or viewing, Don Paul is a hell of a guy. Get that album. You'll really enjoy it. Available
at Louisiana Music Factory only. We're sticking no digital platforms, just Louisiana Music Factory. You can buy it online or come to the store, which is a lot of fun in itself. Okay, brother. We'll see you in every